Hancock Wildlife Foundation. I've known David Hancock ever since you introduced me to him, something about 20 years ago, back in the early days of my tech days, when I actually wrote his, or
I introduced you to David Hancock in 1986.
Yeah, so that's 23 years ago.
23 years ago, yeah.
I wrote his accounting system for his Hancock Publishing house. Using a multi-user computer, a Radio Shack Model 16, and eventually he got rid of it because somebody told him that he should have Windows, but that's a different story. And we kind of lost touch for a while, but not that long ago, about 6 or 7 years ago, David Hancock approached me to help him with his new publishing facility, which basically, instead of using paste ups like they used to use, I mean, I've run a printing press, you've run a printing press. We know how this used to do. We used to do all of these things back in the days when, before computers were prevalent, and you had to paste all this up, and you'd send the paste boards off to the printer, and he'd put them in a great big process camera, make a negative, put it on a plate.
But I even owned a company called Creative Lithographics, and I had a 24-inch brown process camera that we used to do. We were a subcontractor to Time Magazine and Evergreen Press. We used to do all the plates and negatives, 24-inch negatives.
The only thing I have left from my process camera is the lens. It's about that big around.
Yep. And
no iris in it or anything. You did everything with the exposure and that sort of thing. It was all just one lens. That was it. Anyway, changing to the electronic publishing side of things, the publishers or the printers no longer accept paste up. They wanted everything in PDFs. And David does some very wonderful wildlife books. They've got huge pictures in them, high resolution graphics, all of this. Their PDFs are huge, but more than that, his
can
image
you
bank.
Reach that book right over there on the
I can,
left-hand side?
Sure.
If Ebony doesn't mind being booted, yeah. This is not one of the books in particular. This is a Hancock House book, but this gives an idea of the kind of full-page artwork and so on that he does. This is a
The point is
that
David's personal image bank, as well as the image bank that they use for all of these authors, was getting literally into the multi-gigabytes and into the terabytes, into the thousands of gigabytes. And he needed something that would be much more reliable, and I ended up putting together a series of servers for him that they're Linux servers. They do backups. They back up off-site, and that again became the basis of my business relationship with David. Well, in and amongst all of that type of thing, I got working with another company that was doing live streaming video, and David knew this. And one day he called me from out in the middle of nowhere up on Hornby Island, having seen a CD that had video on it from a camera that was in an eagle's nest about that far, okay, so about 10 inches from the edge of the nest. Close enough that the eagle sometimes reached out and pecked at the glass in front of the camera, and actually you could hear it on the microphone because it had audio as well. And David was fascinated with this because he had, being a biologist and a specialist in eagles, specifically. He's climbed trees back in the days of his youth because he's older than you are now, and a lot older than I am.
Older than Methuselah.
Back in the days of his youth, he's got pictures of him climbing Douglas firs and going up in helicopters and flying his float plane around and taking pictures of eagles up in their eyries. And he saw things on this video that he had never seen before.
Yeah, 35 years of studying eagles, never seen this stuff before.
And he'd never seen it. So he asked me whether or not we could put this on the internet because he thought
there might be 200.
There might be a couple of hundred people in the world who would be interested in doing this. And more to the point, and this shows you the kind of person he is, he thought that there would be somebody at university who was in a wheelchair who just simply did not have the opportunity to do the field work that he had done, who would be interested in taking on the study of an eagle from the point of rebuilding the nest in the beginning of the season,
Yep.
through laying the eggs, hatching them, all the way through
Feeding
raising
them
the young
through
to fledging, and doing, you know, scientific work with this.
Yep.
Okay, he had no idea the kind of reception this would get.
Well, I have
100 people, maybe we thought, maybe 200. 40,000 streams at once we had going out through this, from this eagle nest, and over a period of a month, over 1.5 million, 2 million people watched. Individuals watched at some point in these 40,000 streams. It was limited to 40,000 because that's all of the facility that we could get. That's all that the company that was hosting this could afford to put out.
And that was a fantastic thing that they did at that point.
It was impossible to understand the kind of response that this got. Well, Hancock Wildlife Foundation is the follow-on to that, because David did all this himself, and he did it, you know, through Hancock House Publishing.
Paid all the bills himself.
Hancock House Publishing has been supporting his scientific research and all of his reintroduction of grouse and ptarmigan and things like this that he's been doing for years. You've gone out and helped him gather some of his stock. He put together Hancock Wildlife Foundation specifically to take advantage of this education facility that, in his own words, he says, in the first 2 weeks of this, you know, this live video being on, he reached more people in 2 weeks than he had reached doing his lecture series for virtually 50 years.
In all the 400 books that he published.
And all the 400 books that he's put out. And so this absolutely shows the power of the internet and the power of streaming video, the live streaming video. I've been working with him now for almost 4 years on this. We're coming up on our 5th season. We started talking about this and doing this about this time in 2005. So we've done 4 seasons now, and it's been a hoot.
And you did other things too. You did heron rookery in
Stanley
Park, and you've got spawning salmon. And
we have an underwater camera right now, and the reason that we have our fuel cell here is that we have 3 cameras that are slated to go out onto the Chehalis estuary about 75 miles from here.
Out by Harrison.
Out by Harrison Lake, and watch all of the eagles eating the salmon. Now, I got a piece of email from David today. He said they saw what they figure was hundreds of thousands of fish in the estuary there that have not yet spawned. The eagles are starting to show up. We should be putting these cameras in within the next couple of days. So this is...
We're going to take another break.
Yep.
We're going to take another YouTube break. Well, that's the new deal, isn't it? I mean, all the things we've done, I've never done one on YouTube ever. Well, anyway, we'll be back in a couple of seconds with Richard Pitt, and we're going to be talking about this hydrogen, well, this fuel cell, and we'll be right back.